This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle Academy, where filmmakers and screenwriters go to learn from top Hollywood industry professionals. Learn more at ifhacademy.com. I'd like to welcome back to the show returning champion Joshua Caldwell. Man, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. How you doing? How you holding up?
Where you know just
isolation.
Isolation, 6 feet apart, but apparently my daughters don't understand that. They're on top of me constantly. But they're not allowed out because they will be the first to take me and my wife down.
Oh, for sure. Everyone's like, let's get the kids back in school. I'm like, yeah, because they're going to maintain social distancing, you know.
Isn't that insane? I'm hearing that too. They're like, oh yeah, maybe in the fall. I'm like, in the fall? No. Social distancing with 9-year-olds? Are you kidding me?
It's like every fall I'm like, all right, what am I going to get sick with this time? You know, just
and now you know what
naturally occurring stuff, and then now it's going to be the thing that kills me.
Right. So I'm like,
yeah,
for all the parents listening out there, we feel you. We have kids at home as well. It's we can't lock them under the stairs like they do in Harry Potter. We can,
the greatest challenge of our lives right now is
whatever teachers are paid, you need to double or triple it. I swear to God.
Oh yeah. For a little bit, my wife and I were like, I don't know. Do you think we should homeschool the kids? And after this, we're like, no, not happening.
I know, man. I know. It's going to be interesting, so you've been busy though. You've been busy. You've been you've been busy. We're here to talk about your new movie, Infamous, which looks awesome, by the way, dude. Congrats, dude. It looks really awesome. You sent me the trailer for it, and the movie's not out yet, but I'm always been a big fan of what you've been doing since our first episode back in December 6th, 2016. Yes, because I off the top of my head, I remember these things. I didn't look it up right before we jumped on.
Right, exactly.
And it was episode 121 when we talked about Layover was the first time, and that was a $6,000 film. It was
$6,000.
Yeah, it was extremely popular podcast. It's still one of the most listened to podcasts I have in the archives, believe it or not. And then we brought you back for episode 199 to talk about what's the name? Please forgive me.
Negative.
Thank you. And that was a $100K film. And now we're here with Infamous, which it's under $25 million. We can't give exact budget, but it's under $25 million.
Keeps going up.
But it's substantially more than 100,000.
Yeah. For sure.
Without question. So,
it was a good amount of money to make it, but obviously probably could have used a little bit more.
Isn't that
As it
always?
Is, you know?
Oh, I'm sure even Scorsese after Irishman said, with another 10 million, I could have.
Yeah, no. Well, and the funny part is like I have a couple of friends who ended up they did like a $2 million movie. Actually, Joe Penna. I don't know if you know him, but Joe Penna did this great movie called Arctic, and they made it for like $2 million. And then he was getting this other movie. They were talking about budgets and all that stuff. And I don't know what they made it for, but I was like, oh, like what's it like to have like $8 million? He's like, it's pretty much like having a $2 million movie, except now you're paying everybody. So
paying everybody well.
Right. Well, and so because that's the thing is like as you go up, it's like that's not more money for like props and sets. It's like just more money, which is great. They should be getting that money. But it's not. It's a weird point at which, at one point in that 10 range, 10 to 15 range, it doesn't change much.
So you don't have a techno crane for every single shot. That's not the way it works.
Doesn't work like that. Not the way it works. I'm like, I want a techno crane. They're like, what?
No, we were talking about before we jumped on, like how we even if you reached out to me or I reached out to you when like how we met for the first time to get you on the show, and you told me that you reached out to me, if you remember correctly.
Well, as I recall, what happened was, I was just looking. I was always on the lookout for opportunities, and I saw that you had been doing this podcast. It was really cool, but I was like, I know this guy because back when I was in college or something like that, this guy had done this short called Broken that he shot on the DVX 100 something, and I just remember like at the time when that thing came out, I was just like, fuck that guy, man. Like, Roger Ebert's watching this thing, like this 10-minute short, like I hate this dude, because obviously, and it was obviously good for you because like you were getting this stuff. But at the time, you're like, you're a filmmaker, you're trying to get attention for your movies, and you see like, this guy getting a lot of love, and you're like, I want to be that guy instead. I want to switch places.
I'll I'll tell you
and
what.
so I remember this because you did that. You had this great website with this great breakdown of all the behind the scenes and the special effects and everything you did. And it was like, in truth, as much as I was like, fuck this guy, at the same time, I was like, this is such a resource at the time when that kind of stuff just did not exist. Like now you have YouTube. You want to know how to do lightsaber or do blue screen? It's so easy to figure that out. And at that time in 2005, 2006, there was nothing on, like it was hard to get video, just to see video online. It was hard to put your own work online.
Yeah, right? Very difficult. Yeah, it was extremely difficult.
It was QuickTime and embedded, and it was like a whole nightmare.
And YouTube was horrible. YouTube was horrible back. Oh, it was horrible back then.
But I remember, you not only had you made a film, you had created a really valuable resource on how you made that film. I learned a lot by watching it, and
that's awesome.
And so when it was that connection kind of came through, it's just funny because there's been those things where you're connected and you're on the periphery and you're like, yeah, I remember that guy, like he made that film. And now it's like you get connected up and you become friends and you get to talking and you get to participate in stuff moving forward. It's really, it's fun.
It's very cool, man. And it's not everything that shines glimmers that it shines, because when you saw Roger Ebert's review come out, so up until Roger Ebert's review came out, dude, I was getting love. Like, every review was, it's like it's The Matrix meets Fight Club. It was like the craziest reviews for that short film. After Roger Ebert, dude, it was like 10 negative reviews, like bam, like just destroying me. Like, haterade.
We got to take this guy down a little bit. I might have been one of those reviews, so just don't.
It's funny, but man, I've been so impressed with what you've been doing, man, and you're like basically the blueprint of an independent filmmaker, of at least an indie film hustle filmmaker or a tribe member, because you start off with a $6,000 movie, then you jump to a $100,000 movie. Now you have a substantially larger budget movie. Obviously, Kevin Feige should be calling you any day now.
I'm waiting for it.
I mean, for Black Panther 3 or 4, I don't know what it is, but you're ripe to be called. Right. So just please, on this show, if you do get that Marvel call, please come back and talk to us about how that's about.
I will always come back.
And the funny thing is, this is what's going to happen. Like after you're done with the $150-200 million movie, you'd be like, dude, I'm just so stressful. Oh my God. Yeah. It's just like, I'm going to make
a $6,000 movie again.
I just got to go back to make a 6,000. I can't even.
Yeah. Can't do this. I don't want it. Take your $200 million and go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. I need my freedom. Yeah, but when you get hired on a movie like that, you're playing in someone else's sandbox, by their rules.
Right. And their politics.
Yeah, and unless you're like even Joss Whedon and those, that machine will eat and spit you out. Yeah.
It's also challenging. I mean, now those things have become so big, and you see what happened with like Rian Johnson on a Star Wars movie, and it's just like, yeah. It's a tough thing to step into, and you either got to be somebody who could just take it, and you just, that's your thing, and you're bigger than that, or whatever.
Who was the director of Rogue One? Yeah, director of Rogue One.
Of which one?
Rogue One.
Oh,
Gareth.
Yeah, Gareth Edwards.
Gareth Edwards. Gareth. Thank you.
Let's get it right.
Gareth. He got kind of buzzsawed as well. Through that.
I thought Rogue One was great.
It was. It was fantastic.
But it's just it's you're stepping into, and this is nothing against it. I mean, Scorsese calls them rides. Like that's fine. But that's what you're stepping into. You're stepping into, you're stepping into a corporation. You're stepping into, something that has much more going on than just the movie itself.
Oh, the movie's a very small part.
Yeah, a very small part. It's the 30-second commercial on Saturday morning. That's all it is. And you got to be respectful of that if you're going to take that on, Yeah. And there are the filmmakers that obviously get that, willing to play in that sandbox, and there are others it's really tough for them, And I think it's the thing that's also challenging about this world is like, you are, as a director, regardless, that you have the responsibility on you, and at the same time, it's your name is on it, and it's your filmography. Right. And that's directing is difficult. It's the career where, the things that you do are going to affect whether you can get another job. If you're at a regular company and you do a project and the project isn't that great, I mean, maybe you'll be considered for being fired. I doubt it. It's just gonna be like, okay, that didn't work out. Let's move on to the next thing. It doesn't follow you like your resume and your filmography does, and so that can be challenging too, especially if like you're trying to be particular the way I am about the type of movies that you make.
Right. Well, let's speak about your latest film, Infamous.
Yeah.
You wrote the script for this and did the hunting and the packaging and putting it all together. Yeah. Can you tell us the journey? Because I've been through that journey a few times in my life. It's exactly what they teach you in film school, isn't it? It's exactly.
Yeah, exactly. They teach that in film school?
They don't at all. I'm being sarcastic.
No. I know. I didn't take that class. I mean, I had come out of doing, Layover. I came out of doing South Beach, where I had that I wasn't thrilled with the work that I had done. I did a movie called Be Somebody, which had a significantly higher budget than Layover, but I didn't write the script. There were a lot of issues with us going into production on that. It was kind of a job, and then I did Negative, which was, me going back and saying, well, I'm going to just go make something for myself, but suffering from, just issues on the movie. I also didn't write that movie. And there were a lot of these kind of like, $2 to $3 million digital movies coming out. Lionsgate was making digital movies, Legendary was starting to put these out. And I said, let me write something for that around that budget level, that I think could be cool. And of course, I just done a spy thriller with Negative, and I was thinking, I kind of really want to do a heist movie. And trying to think of unique ideas for a heist movie. I don't recall what it was that really prompted this idea, but I think a couple years prior, I had seen this photograph by this photographer named Mo Gelber that had been posted on Facebook, and it was a picture of this young couple being led away in handcuffs, and the woman was either pulling away from or going in for a kiss, and she had the smile on her face, and people were like, "Oh, it's a new Bonnie and Clyde, modern day Bonnie and Clyde." The true story is they weren't robbing banks at the time. They got arrested for graffiti or something like that. But that image just kind of stuck with me.
Much less interesting film.
Much less interesting, exactly. But the image stuck with me, and it was kind of just a real visceral image. And I remember at some point going, well, is there a modern Bonnie and Clyde? And what would that look like? And it would probably be something on social media. If you look back at sort of the original Bonnie and Clyde were, the legend of Bonnie and Clyde was created by newspapers to sell newspapers. The real story is somewhat more tragic and much less romantic. But they were really kind of, John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, these guys were the outlaws that became celebrities as a result of media, and so then you obviously have a natural comparison, which I try to stay away from, but natural comparison to Natural Born Killers, even though that's a fictional film, it was still pertaining to this idea of let's take these killers and put them on Dateline in 2020 and give them primetime interviews, and thus turn them into celebrities. I was like, well, what's the modern version of that? I'm like, somebody posting their stuff on Facebook, and that just was that click, it's like, okay, it's Bonnie and Clyde, social media, modern day, go. And for a long time, I told my agents about it, and the idea, and I was like, well, maybe, I don't know if I want to write it. Maybe we'll find somebody else to write it. And I was kind of just hemming and hawing on it. And finally I said, you know what, I think I do want to write. I'm just going to sit down and try and work this out. So I did. And I spent a couple months writing it, developing it, doing the first draft. And then, gave it to my team. They read it. They had feedback. Like, for example, in the original version, they were just doing banks and small banks and liquor stores and all that kind of stuff. And one of my agents had the idea of how can we make it different? Like, he's always going, how do we make it different? And one of the things he said was, what about putting in a weed store? What if they're robbing weed stores? Because he had just seen this article about how all these dispensaries are unable to get bank accounts and do credit transactions. So they have a lot of cash on hand. I was like, awesome. Let's just do that. So switched it up, put that in there. And then at that point, they were like, okay, I think we're ready, to take it out. So we went through a long process of taking it out to people, taking it out to studios, trying to get them on board, no talent attached, tons of no's, and I really kind of had tried to firm up this belief at the time that you just got to go get your no's so you can get your yes, I remember a great story about pertaining to this, which was about like a real estate agent who was trying to sell a house, and her boss came and said, well, how many no's do you usually get before you get a yes? She's like, well, like 25. He's like, how many have you gotten? 10? Well, you got 15 more to go. And it was that attitude of like, all I'm doing is getting through the no's to get the yes, as opposed to letting it get me down that so many people don't want to do it. I'm like, it takes one person, and so pushing through that, we eventually connected with a producer, Scott Levinson, really liked it. And he had a friend of his who was an actor who, had some budget available, could bring money to the table. And so we started going down that path, and started looking at cast for the girl, because he was going to play the lead. And then that kind of dissolved and went away. And as things do. Right,
no, stop it. In Hollywood?
Never happened before. First time. And Scott came to me and said, look, I know this didn't work out. I believe in this project. I think we can get it made. We got to take it out wide. And I said, okay. And he started sort of giving it to some people. And one of the people he gave it to was Thor Bradwell, who was Bella Thorne's manager. And Thor read it and really loved it. And because he had been talking to Scott and told him, like, Bella's looking for young writer directors. She wants to do this kind of thing. And Scott was like, I think I've got a script for her. And so she read it, and we did a Skype call like soon after, and she came on board. So we didn't have financing in place. We didn't have any of that. I don't know if she'll do that on another project, so no guarantees. But, because usually agents always, well, what's the offer? But right. to her credit, she really believed in it, and she came on board very early, and we were able to use her to leverage financing. So it's like the whole thing of like, well, you can't get financing without an actor, and you can't get an actor
chicken
without
egg.
Money.
Yeah, chicken and egg.
Chicken and the egg. We were very fortunate that Bella we broke the mold with it, and we got Bella on board without having to commit to any kind of money at the time, and started taking it out, and then went through a whole lot of no's again. Again, never happened before. And then finally landed with some independent financiers that, again, really believed in the project and really wanted to get it made. I went into it knowing that this movie was going to be a tough sell. I mean, there's violence, there's murder, there's robbery. It's got a punk rock sort of vibe to it that I really tried to push, and it's trying to be out there. I remember the one thing I wanted to do with this was I was like, the word subtlety is not going to be anywhere near this movie, because I just think it's hard to break through the noise when you've got something that's like super subtle and you're not backed by a massive marketing campaign going for your Oscar. I just was like, I'm going to make something like batshit crazy that people can't ignore. And so like Bella was a perfect complement to that, right? Like, because she's attention getting, she's forward thinking, like she riles people up, and I wanted that for the movie. And so, all this whole time I was just like, there's going to be people who don't want to make this. They don't want to come near it. I just want the person that says, yes, like I do want to do that. So that happened with Bella, that happened with the financiers, that happened with our distributor. Like they were the ones that said yes, and said, we love this and we want to push it out there. And so that's the person I was always looking for, as opposed to being in that position where I'm getting so down on myself because I'm like, oh, nobody wants to make it. Who cares if nobody wants to make it? You just need that one person to make it, to make it. And that's who you're going to find. And sometimes you got to go through a lot of no's to get there.
What was the time period of this? How long did this take from the moment that you wrote this script to the point where you started shooting?
So I had the idea in summer of 2016 and wrote the script September. First draft was September 2016. We started going out 2017. Bella came on board in July of 2018. And then we started shooting. We shot the movie in July of 2019, and now it's coming out in June of 2020.
So basically almost 3 years.
4 years.
Yeah, 3 years of before you start shooting.
Oh yeah, before that. Yeah, 3 years before we started shooting.
And a year and a half before any major talent was attached.
Yeah.
So
Which sounds like a long time, but you're also like, I don't recall it being that long. I was kind of like, they'd be like, we're doing this. I'm like, all right.
But you were doing other things in between that while you were doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I was doing my own stuff. I was like doing client work. I was writing other things. I was, staying busy in that space. But at the same time, like this was the thing, And the other thing that I was I was also starting to get aware of was like the topical nature of the film was like, this is not a film that can be made 5 years from now. Mm-hmm. Like it's either going to happen in real life or it's is going to die. I think you can watch the movie 5 years from now and still understand it and love it. But I think like, I don't know if this movie is going to get made in 3 years, you know, like, so there was an urgency too of like, this feels topical and it feels like we got to get it going now. So there was that urgency to try and make that happen.
You know, the other thing I wanted people to understand, I asked you that question specifically because so many filmmakers listening have no idea what it really takes to go out and get financing. Because your other films, you moved much quicker because they were much lower budget. You had much more control, and but you have
a higher thing, and it was already there.
Correct, exactly. But when you're going out and trying to get, you know, 7 figures plus on a budget, and getting some cast attached, it's a time period. You got to play that game, and you got. I mean, sometimes I was chasing money for one of my projects for 3-4 years, and still couldn't pack it.
And you get it, and you lose it.
Oh, so many times the money's about to. How many times the money's about to drop?
It's being wired.
It's being wired. It's being wired today. The money's being wired today. Oh no, there was a mix up with the wiring. They got the account numbers.
Wrong account number went somewhere else.
The account numbers went to the wrong place. Now it got bounced to England, and now this thing. I can't even, man.
and you know, it's the challenge too. You know, that I think sometimes people have this perspective is like, well, certainly it's low budget. $2 million is low budget. You know, it's also $2 million. Like, most people don't see that amount of money in their lifetime, and here you are asking somebody to give it to you on the trust that you're going to provide a product that is going to give them a life, right? Like, it's still a business transaction as much as it's about the creative. Mm-hmm. And so I see a lot of people, and I was probably like this too when I was much younger, which is like, nobody believes it, you know, they don't get it. They don't want to give me the money.
They don't want to give me my 10 million for my genius.
Whatever. Yeah. Like, exactly. Like, I deserve this. I'm entitled to whatever. And I think, like, you know, that's the thing is, like, you were going out and you're asking for people to give you like a significant amount of money, more than whatever your house costs, you know, and putting that trust in you and backing you to make it. And no amount of like, I did the greatest short film that went to all these festivals is going to necessarily convince them of that.
Nothing. You know, there's not even District 9, which is arguably one of the more successful short films ever made. You know, if it wasn't for Peter Jackson coming on board and saying, "Come this way. Yeah. I'll take care of everything for you, sir." And we're going to make it. Never gets made. It never gets made. So I don't care. Yeah. And that's another thing I want everybody listening. If you have this short film that won everything, and we've seen how many like just insanely viral short films from really talented directors have come out in the past 10, 15 years. Like I still remember like, Mark Wahlberg got hooked on this one, and that one got hooked on that one. And
where are they?
It's a long process to play in the system. Yeah. Like, if you want to play the game, those are the rules.
Be prepared. Yeah.
You don't want to play the game? Take $6,000, go make a French speaking love story.
Right. Love story.
In the middle of Los Angeles at night. Yeah. Exactly. Or run to Sundance over 4 days and shoot a movie.
36 hour shoot. Like,
exactly.
You can do that all you want.
And you have all the control, and it's all the control you want. You don't have to ask anybody for anything. It is a wonderful place, but you don't get to play with the same tools and the same toys.
And just nobody owes you anything.
Yeah.
You wrote a script, nobody owes you anything.
No one cares.
No one cares. They just don't, you know. And so it's a process of creating. You got to create a character. You got to create the version of yourself that people are going to care about and want to work with and want to be a part of, you know. And it's challenging because even if you're in, you know, I mean, I'm certainly not close to being, you know, where I hope to be someday. And even, you know, but even with the things I've done and the ability to say, well, I've done 3 features, I've done this series for Hulu, it's still going through the process of tons of no's, you know. And you get the people saying, oh, well, we're developing something similar, which is bullshit, and their way of saying no, you know.
Yes, I heard that one too.
It's also, you're like, well, where's that? You know, that didn't come out. But it's, you know, it's just, who knows? It's the person woke up on a certain side of the bed. It's, you know, they don't like this. It's such a subjective experience.
No, I'm sure. I promise you, it's like it's something as simple as the assistant that's reading your script. The boss yelled at him this morning, going, "I need you to find me something that's internet based. That's about some kids on the internet doing wrong stuff. I want a script like that." And your script happened to land on that table, something along those lines. I just wanted to bring something to your attention, Joshua. Just like you, when you were in college and you looked at my quote unquote success with Broken and you said, fuck that guy. I promise you, someone listening to this episode right now is like, this guy got his own third movie. It's like, it's, above, under 25 million. Screw this guy, man. Why does he get to do it?
The trailer and like, this movie sucks.
Exactly. So it's a circle of the filmmaker life. It's just,
it always happens. It's easy, man. It's like, it's hard, I'm still in that position where I see people getting opportunities. And you're like, man, like, what did they do? And the one thing that I've also, I wrote a big, long article about this called Relative Success in Hollywood. The idea that like, well, you need to define what success is to you, because like I've had plenty of people who are like, I know somebody who got a movie with a great distribution deal, and I talked, and you see the news, you're like, oh, that's amazing. And then you talk to him and he's like, oh, dude, we got screwed.
Wait a minute. Wait, you mean screwed by a distributor? No, stop it.
Don't talk bad about distributors. We love them.
Until the first
it's a terrible deal. It was like, oh, it's a terrible deal, but it's the only one we could get. Or we sold our script, but like we have no control over it anymore. And like, I don't know, the guy directing it, like, we don't know if it's going to be good, and so it became like I was reflecting a lot on this because I was in this period of like, what do I want to do? Am I going to be successful doing this? And it's like, well, what does that mean to you? And so it's very easy to look at other people and sort of have envy and have desire and say, oh, I wish I was there. But like, one, you don't know the circumstances by which they had to get there. But two, it's like, well, you can't control what somebody else is doing and the advantages and the opportunities they're being presented with. You don't control any of that. All you control is what you're doing. So what are you doing? Are you pounding away writing that script? Like, are you doing what I did, where I spent 10 years in coffee shops, after a full-time job, having dinner with my wife for an hour and then going out for 3-4 hours to write. The sacrifice that comes from that. So like, I obviously people can look at me and say, well, fuck that guy. This movie's shitty. Like, whatever, fuck him, middle fingers up. But like, at the same time, it's like, I've been working at this for a long time and I've been putting in the work, that's all I do. I get up and I put in the work, and it's hard and it's like not an easy thing, and you got to stick with it. And that's where you're going to get to where you want to be. You got to stick through those no's to get to find that one person that's going to say yes. If you're going to be discouraged after 2-3 people say no, then
you'll never make it.
This is not your business.
This is so not your business. And it's not even. And Hollywood again is always the nicest FUs I've ever seen in my entire life. It's this. There's no other business that does it just quite so nice.
Oh, yeah. Because they sort of learned their lesson that like you never know.
You never know. You don't want to piss this guy or this girl off because she could win the next Oscar, or she could be the next hot director. He could be the next hot director. It's like we're working on something similar, so we have to pass.
Yeah. We got some in development that's kind of like this, and
it's the nicest.
Yeah.
we should create like a cheat sheet of like the excuses that they say. You're like, hold on. Oh, that's excuse number 7. Oh, I didn't know that one. That was good.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. So you've gone to this much larger budget. This is the largest budget you've worked with. Okay. So this is the largest budget you've worked with in your career. What lessons did you take from your micro budget and low budget days into this bigger budget?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this because like I think that one of the things that I so enjoyed about the lower budget stuff, the micro budget stuff, was the freedom, the ability to shoot in certain ways and get a lot of material and like have, a ton of days, where you're not trying to just adhere to a schedule. And a part of me is going like, this is not going to last. Like, I'm not going to have, this.
You're not Kubrick.
I'm not Kubrick yet.
Yeah,
you go back to it, but there's the curve that you got to get through, where you don't. Right. And I was just thinking, like, well, how do I continue to do something that feels my aesthetic, my style, in my approach, in a vein that is not going to have the same unlimited, non-limitations on it. And true to form with this one, like, we had that was the case with this. I mean, it was a union shoot. So it was IATSE, so that comes with an increase. Well, I mean, I think for us, it was actually like the pay didn't increase because of the level we were at. But obviously you pay in to health, the health insurance and like all that kind of stuff. And those are added costs. But also you're now limited in certain ways with, you got to have a certain number of crew, you got to do this based on the tier that you're in. And also like you can't suddenly shoot for 40 days, if you don't have the budget to do it, because you can't really scale down. You can't just say, okay, crew, don't work today. Right. We're going to just go shoot stuff on our own. And also it comes with, we've all been on the bigger sets, it just comes with, well, not all of us, but it comes with, if it's you running around with a 5D and you could just go boom, 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 boom. Okay. I shot 5 angles in 5 minutes. It doesn't work like that. You've got equipment everywhere. You got people, slower. You got to explain what's going on. It's so much slower. And if you're trying to keep a pace and trying to do tons of takes and trying to do this, like that can be a real challenge. I mean, there's absolutely no way I could have done this as my first feature. It would have been an absolute disaster, but having done the previous micro budget things, it allowed me to frame a lot of the conversations with my creatives and with the producers around how are we going to do this. So like one of the things when the financiers came on board, I said, here's the thing, guys, like I'm not going to do this as a 15-day shoot. Like it's not happening. If that's how you want to do it, awesome, but we're not going to make the movie together, because I had done those 15-day shoots and they're awful.
They're brutal.
And it's just like the problem I have with it is it's not about getting the best material. It's not about making the best movie. It just becomes an assembly line. And I knew that this make something really special and have the time to do it right. And I knew that we were gonna have a lot of stunts and a lot of gunfire and like a lot of locations. It's a road movie. There's like 34 locations in the movie. And so, that's what started. I said, we're not doing a 15-day shoot. I'm not saying it's got to be a 35-day shoot, as much as I would like that. But we're not doing a 15-day shoot. And we are going to end up doing a couple days in Florida with a skeleton crew. And they said, all right. Of course, you come back to those conversations later, 2 days before you're supposed to go to Florida. But, I kind of was like, that's how I'm going to make the movie. And they said, okay. I was in a position to bring my DP on, who I'd worked with on my second feature, who I really loved. Now I had DP'd negative and very briefly thought about doing this, but there's a comfort level with producers when you're trying to do everything and they're like, hang on, like, why don't you hire somebody that's actually supposed to do that? And I sort of always knew I was going to do that. I just was in my head thinking, oh, is this a possibility? I'm really glad I didn't, because I think it looks amazing thanks to Eve's contributions. But a lot of those conversations with her came out of the idea, like, look, like I've done all these other movies using available light, using like artificial light, making use of small, lightweight cameras. Like we need to be in that world because we do not have the time to be doing major setups, with certain exceptions, And so we, sorry, my kids are popping in, but, with certain exceptions that we built into the schedule. And so, and then I also made the decision to operate because I had realized through previous experience that how I direct flows through the operation of the camera and how that camera interacts with the actors. And I also knew we could move faster because rather than trying to explain to somebody else this handheld move that I want, or provide them the freedom to take a chance on something without the risk of being fired, right? Because like operators are like, well, I don't want to ruin a take by doing something he doesn't want me to do. You haven't worked together before because all this crew was out of Oklahoma where we shot. I was able to just move faster and I was able to go, we're doing this, let me do the move. As soon as I knew I had it, we were done, we were moving on. And then also comes back to having those early conversations with your entire crew and your production managers and all this stuff of saying like, we need to be mobile. Like we need to be small footprints. Like we need to be in a position to move quickly because some of these days we're going to have 3 company moves and it also includes a stunt, and so because the one thing I wanted to do on this was I wanted to make a road movie. I wanted to make a movie that had scope. I wanted to make a movie that felt like it was big, and so to do that, you gotta move, but you also gotta shoot quality, like I've never really wanted to do the whole like people in a room thing. I think people can do that really well. I can't. So much of the work that I do is about being on location and being, giving it scope and giving the wide shots. Like the wide shot is free, like whether you shoot a close up or a wide, still it costs the same amount of money. So
let's touch on that a little bit. What are some tips to give your micro budget or even lower budget films some scope? Because just from my point of view with Ego and Desire, I mean, I was shooting wide all the time because I had a cast of thousands who had no idea they were in my movie. And just these mountain views. And it was just that movie looked so big, but it was shot with a little camera.
Little camera. Yeah.
Little camera. So, so what are some of your tips?
I think it's not just about framing wide, although you want that. You want to have positions where you can give scope, but I think it's also about depth. Like if you continually, and it's also about not being indoors if you don't have to be, because I think when you're outside and you see a long ways down, there's an assumption. First of all, most audiences don't know it. They just know, okay, they're outside and there's depth. But from the people that know, there's an assumption that you locked all that down when maybe you didn't, or that you somehow had control over it when you didn't. To me, I think it's about creating depth to your frame, even if you're shooting a lot of mediums or close-ups. I think it's about getting your wides when they count. I think it's about, in our case, we did a lot of long takes. So there are a number in the movie of really cool oneers that we did that I knew from the beginning I was going to do. I did it intentionally because of the subject of the movie or the way that we were sort of approaching the movie. But I also knew that so what had happened was, this is where this tip, but there's a little bit of a story. So I directed a series of 2 episodes of a series that has not come out yet. Funny enough, it's about a pandemic. But one of the episodes it was about this home invasion and in the middle of the pandemic, and the 2 robbers and the 2 homeowners kind of get locked at home and there's a fight and all this kind of stuff. And the script was the longest script of all of them. And there was a lot of action in it. And fight and all this stuff. And I remember one of the other directors, producers, creators of it was saying hey man, we just spent 4 hours trying to do a punch. You might want to think about the action in the movie. And I started thinking about it and I started thinking if we could shoot a lot of this as a single take, we'll spend a lot of time setting up for it. But then once we got it, we're done. And the other thing that it allowed me to do was it allowed me to, when you're in a single take, the audience understands that they're not going to see everything. And so it actually allowed us to hide some of the more complicated action pieces, like a guy getting stabbed in the stomach. We didn't have to see that on screen because we happened to be over on somebody else that was more important to be in that moment. And we come back and all of a sudden the guy's bleeding out. And so what happened though was we were able to get the longest script done in about in the 2 days that we had with time left over, because we spent a lot of time rehearsing. But once that was in the can, it was in the can. Instead of going, okay, we spent a lot of time getting this one shot, we got to do 3 more angles and we got to do just as many takes, And so for a lot of the scenes that involved robberies, involved gunfire, I made the choice to do it as this kind of complicated single take, but I knew that once we got it, we were done.
Yeah, you're done.
It wasn't going to take 50 takes to do it. It might take 10, but 10 takes is great.
But yeah, and it's an ROT. It's like an ROT though, return on time. So to cut out 10 minutes of your movie and shoot 10 minutes and not have to edit really those 10 minutes. If you're able to do a oneer that's 4 or 5 minutes, or even a 10-minute oneer, if you're really ambitious, it might take you all day, but you knocked out 10 minutes. For you to shoot coverage of 10 minutes and edit it, that's a lot. That's not a day generally. Yeah, generally speaking.
There was there was another one where we were in this house that was under construction, which is one of their hideouts, and I wanted to shoot this particular scene at what was supposed to be dawn, right? But pre-dawn, so before the sun came up. And I was just like, well, we should just shoot this as a oneer because there's no way we can light this. There's no way we can, but the other thing that I liked about it wasn't just like a time-saving tip or even like a scope tip. It was born out of the story, it was born out of just in particular, with this movie. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a very subjective experience of our main character, Ariel. So I've positioned it as basically this movie is Ariel's Instagram feed. Like you are seeing the story she wants you to see. And then I started thinking about, well, what are some things to hint at that without being literal? Because it never says it in the movie. Mm-hmm. But like one of those things is like, well, think about like, well, how do we view content now? Like we're so used to seeing Instagram stories, which are 15-second long takes. Like you're not used to seeing edits, and all this kind of stuff. You're used to seeing, longer sort of just reality driven types of takes. And so I wanted to incorporate that. And I also wanted just the immediacy. I wanted the idea, we're live streaming this. You're feeling like you're there. It's as if they have a cameraman with them, mm-hmm. And so it became a very subjective experience. But at the same time, that gave me so much freedom because I was like, well, we don't need to worry about shooting this. I don't need to worry about shooting this. Like, we can get away with so much more, especially at the longer takes. And so, the long takes are certainly good. And it's, it kind of going back to Layover, it's about locations too. Like Layover was shot very inexpensively, but we were all over Los Angeles, not always legally, but we were all over Los Angeles.
Sir, you stole everything, and I stole everything. It's fine.
Right.
we come in a long history. Hitchcock stole stuff. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's the same thing. It's still having that mentality. Like, how are we going to steal stuff? The other thing that we did, and again, part of this was designed in the movie, was because it's so much social focused, and there's the idea that Ariel is filming stuff with her phone. There's like a montage in the movie, and I'm like, they were like, "How are you doing the montage?" Because I'm going like, "You try and do a montage in a movie on 21 days? Like, forget it. Like, not happening, right? Because you want these little clips." But I said to everybody, I said to my DP, I did myself. I told Bella, I'm like, "Here's some iPhones, just shoot everything." So I'm driving to set, shooting the sunrise, like I'm getting like cars on the road. I'm getting all this stuff. I even went and shot a couple things that were like, I probably would have done on like the Alexa Mini if I had the time. Mm-hmm. But I was just like, I'm just going to do it on the phone because it's better to have it than not have it. And I've already established a visual language in the movie whereby we are using iPhone footage. And so as a result, it just feels so much bigger because it feels like we had so much time to shoot all this extra content that's 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, because we didn't have to take up the time to do it on an Alexa Mini where it just takes forever because you got to set up. And it's like, okay, we're going to light this and we're going to do this. And you're like, this is on screen for 3 frames. We don't need it.
But that's the thing that people listening should understand is that if you are only going to go about your screenwriting, your filmmaking process in the way it's laid out in the textbooks, you will not survive. There has to be this out of the box, like, hey, let's just go grab it. Like, that's a great idea. And it works thematically with what you're doing. Like, if the footage is not exactly perfect, like it doesn't match exactly the Alexa, it's fine because that's the kind of, you're setting up that language.
You've already seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. You've set up that language within the piece. But like sometimes, I remember shooting, I'll shoot with a red and then I'll shoot with a black magic pocket somewhere, or I'll shoot and you just insert little shots that nobody will ever notice. But
nobody notices.
But you're able to grab extra shots, extra angles, and that also adds a lot more production value. The second you start moving that camera, you start getting different coverage. It just adds more production value.
Yeah, and but it also comes back to because you just mentioned this that nobody notices is like it comes back to that, right? Like it's the same thing I did on Layover, which is that the freedom that shooting on a 5D at 6400 ISO gave us far outweighed the tiny little bit of noise that might have been noticed by one person,
right?
And it allows you the freedom to sort of tell the story, and if you can tell the story well, and you can tell the story with scope, and you can make something that feels personal to people watching it, or is fun or whatever, that will far outweigh any kind of perfection in the image, And so I would say that to my DP. I'm like, look, like it's going to be way better for all of us to have more angles and more of this than it is have that one perfectly lit image. Like, and my DP agreed. And really what we settled on was the idea that the only time we're ever really going to take that time to light is either if it's at night and we have to, because there's a lot of night stuff in the movie, or if we're settling. Like if we're going to be on Bella's face for a 4-minute scene, we'll take the time to light it right.
Yeah.
But for a lot of the little interstitial and the quick stuff, like Eve would be like, I'm not going to light this. Like I remember there was a convenience store where we had a ton of action. In addition to like just a couple scenes that happen in it, outside of it, there was also a huge gunfight. that occurs in it. And I remember talking to Eve, I'm like, because we initially talked, she's like, there's a lot to do in here. I'm going to swap the bulbs and let you go, you know? And I'm like, so that's also like, you got to have a DP that's going to understand that.
Oh, 110%.
And is going to buy into it, you know, and support it, you know, in the way that she did. And I mean, I think it's like, personally, I think it's her best work. And the stuff in there, you don't notice. You're not missing it. You're not going like, oh, like there's a shadow there. Like it feels like real, which is what I'm always going for. Like I always want that feeling of like, oh, we just sort of stepped in here and turned the camera on, you know, because that lends itself a reality.
I think there was a film specifically that was an inspiration to both you and I, which was For Lovers Only. Michael Polish's and Mark Polish's amazing little 5D film, and they were the first 5D feature, essentially. If I'm not mistaken, if not the first.
No, I think it was. Yeah.
If it wasn't the first, definitely the most profitable. Of its day, without question.
Yeah.
But they did very similar things. I think we both took the same idea. Like you grabbed the camera and ran around LA. I grabbed the camera and ran around Sundance. They grabbed the camera and ran around Paris. And the value, the production value, the scope, the quickness, the things they were able to get. It's exciting. It really is exciting. I love that little micro budget. Running around doing these kind of stories. It's so much fun, man. It really is
so much fun. And the other thing too is like, you know, you gotta know all this. Like we shot in the Alexa Mini, but you know, I've seen the Alexa Mini really built out.
Oh yeah.
You know, with like a studio setup on your shoulder. And you're like, what? And I said to my team, I'm like, we got to keep it small. Like this thing has got to be tiny. Like, you know, we got to get everything off it. We got to keep it super light, super mobile, because like that's how you're then able to like, hey, just like grab this, like, oh, this is cool. Like, let me just pop in here. Like, you know, and it drives my DP nuts, but at the same time, like that's what you need. You need the ability to capture a lot of this footage so that you can very easily cut something together that feels bigger, as opposed to being, well, I only had the one angle, you know, or I didn't have the cutaway, or I didn't have this. And like, so, you know, it's you know, you want to be like, again, I remember being that filmmaker, you know, when I was younger, going like, oh, let's get the camera as big as possible. Let's put on a matte box, even though we're not using it, you know, there's no reason to. And now I'm like, how do we get it as small as we can? You know,
when you're younger, sir, you're compensating for a larger camera. You need that Angenu full zoom.
Yeah. You need a full camera package.
You need that full zoom. Package. You need all the cables popping out there. Why? Because you're a real filmmaker at that point. Because I see Spielberg and I see Nolan with that. Like I need to shoot IMAX. Yeah. But the difference is they have 200 million plus to make their projects.
In 100 days.
And 100 days, if not more, to do whatever the hell they want. And you understand that. Strip it, man. Strip it down as tight and move as fast as you can. Now, so this was a project that you not only wrote it, took it through development and packaging and everything, getting it ready for production, but then you now have been involved with the distribution side of things and selling it. So how did you get this thing after you get it done? You went with a sales agent or a sales company. How did it go?
So the sales agent came with the financier, because a lot of the discussions, you know, what we ended up doing was that whole foreign sales model, you know, so a lot of those discussions roll all around, well, this cast member is worth this cast member is worth this, you know, this is what they get you. So, you know, I think that's one of the challenges of indie filmmaking, you know, because you are in a lot of cases dependent on talent's previous work and their reach. You know, if you're doing a movie, I think like a big movie, big studio movie, I think there's ultimately like a total responsibility to, you know, really diversify and really like try and do what you can to like, you know, build some people up, because it doesn't matter. Movies being sold on something else. But indies are tough. You know, we went through a process of having some real discussions about like, you know, about the film and who's best for it. And you find yourselves in some way like a little boxed in, you know, because there's a foreign market and it's limiting. And, you know, that's where a lot of that work has to be done, you know, to really helping build out, you know, the value of a lot of people, because people don't realize that. You're like, oh, just cast this person. You're like, well, Not yet, you know.
I'd say at the $6,000 movie, absolutely cast whoever you want.
100%. But at some point, then you get to a budget where, like, yeah, you're responsible for trying to get this back, and your financiers are only going to guarantee this money if the sales company can guarantee the sale for this amount of money, you know. And so, you know, so that was also challenging, because you could say, well, I want this person. They're like, well, they don't have the same value that like this person does, you know, and you know, so you gotta be smart about it, you know, and you gotta really, you know, sort of know what you're looking for, but also be open to ideas that you may not have thought of. But they were on board in that casting process.
But you walked in with, so then you financed this film based off of pre-sale estimates.
Yeah.
That's how the financing got put in place. So,
that's how that, yeah, exactly.
So
it was independent financing, right? It was
so it's as secure as you can get an independent film, basically. It's like you have a sales company that says, okay, in Germany we're going to get $15,000 or $50,000 for X actor, guaranteed. Next, England's going to give us $100,000 if this actors are in it, and this is this genre and this thing. And you had all these estimates laid out first. And that was a good general idea. So the investors felt somewhat comfortable that they're going to recoup their money, at least.
Right, exactly. And they do projections, which like sometimes turn out to be true, sometimes don't. But it's the surest thing you can get, you know, to having some kind of like, okay, maybe we might make our money back.
But that was a sales agent, or that's a sales company basically who was
sales company, agent, sales company
that was working with you.
Yeah, they go to market. So like we announced. In 2019, we announced the project at Berlin, you know, and then they're at Berlin and they're doing the thing in the hotel room where we have this script with this actor, you know, with Bella Thorne in it, and this actor, you know, or whatever, and this director, and this is what it's about. And they go, okay, like, well, we would give this much for that, right? And then you take that as a promissory note, and you go to the bank and you say, they will agree to give this as long as we deliver this movie. And the bank says, okay, here's the loan or whatever it's going to be. Yeah. So it's a unique thing. I hadn't really been down that before, in that world before, and it's a challenging world, you know, because it's a lot of you're like, this person is valuable in Germany and has no recognition in France, you know.
Yeah,
and
like I can't
outside of the States.
I just let you know I can't walk the streets in Mumbai. I'm just saying. I'm huge in Mumbai.
Imagine. It's all broken ruin nothing.
I mean, I can't walk the streets because of broken. Yeah. No, sure. It's called sarcasm.
It's just Sundance anymore, but
that's well. There's that, but that's for other reasons. Exactly. Everyone listening, it's called sarcasm. Anyway, so all right. So then you got picked up by Vertical eventually, right?
Yeah, got picked up by Vertical. So we independently financed it. You know, two great producers, Sean Sanghani and Colin Banks, were on board as sort of the financiers, and we basically, sorry, not Banks, Bates, Colin Bates. I always call him Banks for some reason.
Because he's got the money, baby. He's got the money.
I gotta get it right. Yeah. But anyway, you know, so they financed it, and then. You know, look, I mean, we finished the movie and we went to Sundance, or we got a cut done for Sundance because, like, why not take that shot? And didn't get in. Supposedly came close, but didn't get in.
Yeah, and we're also developing this project as well, so we have to pass on it. Yeah, same excuse. Yeah, you were so close. Exactly. Oh, it was like you and like one other guy. Oh,
it was between you and this other movie, and we just decided to go. But look, I mean, you know, it's tough because. Festivals are hard, man. You know, festivals are really hard. And now, which we haven't gotten to that. We haven't even gotten to that part yet with the COVID situation. Like, I know, and so we actually then our targets were Sundance, South by, and Tribeca.
Sure.
And probably the saving grace was we did not get into South by or Tribeca. I think it would have been much more devastating to have gotten in.
Oh, and not screen
canceled. Mm-hmm. Forget it. And, you know, I think we kind of took a shot, but really, like, our producer really believed, you know, look, festival will be great. It's not necessary, you know, because the other thing too is, I mean, I think it's a really commercial movie. It's not some, like, you know, dour after school special about the dangers of online social media crimes, you know, or something like that. Like,
wow, after school special. You have dated yourself, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Did not make that movie. You know, but what I tried to do, what I really wanted to do, and what I've always wanted to do with the movies I make is I wanted to create a movie that had kind of this commercial backbone, the spine to it that was a commercial movie, but then had sort of a depth to it, throughout, that created really interesting characters with kind of asking interesting questions, but at the same time, if you didn't want to pay attention to all that, you could still just enjoy the gunfights. So I knew that we had something that was potentially desirable from a distribution standpoint, because it's a really fun movie that moves, and there's a lot of action, and clearly you've seen the trailer, so you can tell like there's a lot to put in there, and the trailer's not even a fraction of the movie overall. So, so we felt that, and then, and then COVID got in the way of a lot of stuff,
Yeah. So how has COVID been a pro and the cons of COVID? Because there is some pros to the release.
There are some pros. Yeah.
So tell me what you think.
So it was a bit of a negative because it's impacted sales, because everyone's closed down. Berlin, not a lot of people showed up, canceled festivals, not for us, but obviously for other people. And obviously this is all obviously the beyond the mass death and destruction and economic collapse that it's caused. I mean, that's
in our small little world.
In our small little world. But at the same time, and as a result, like with Vertical, we would have done the whole like theatrical thing, where 2030 city, VOD, day and date release that everybody does, and so obviously that's not happening. So we lose the theatrical, but at the same time, like one, nobody goes to see it in the theater with those things anyway. But two, I always believe that the audience for this movie are watching this at home or on their phone.
Yes, specifically this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as cool as it is to see in a theater, because that's how you want every movie to be seen. More people see it that way, so I'm fine with that, And so I think the only thing might be that there's a chance we might not have come out as quickly as we did if it weren't for COVID. We might have waited a little bit longer. But I think we saw an opportunity, with the lack of content coming out, with a lot of people still stuck in their homes. We saw an opportunity to maybe fill a void of people really wanting to see Josh Caldwell's next movie.
Obviously, sir. Fuck this guy. Fuck this guy.
Got a movie coming out. But at the same time, though, it's like we finished in January. Like we were done with the movie.
That's a pretty quick turnaround. That's a quick turnaround.
Right before this whole thing hit. So like the other thing is we had a done movie. A lot of people were still in post, or they weren't complete, or the post houses got shut down. So we were in a position where we did have something that we could sort of offer and put out. And I think that, we saw, I hate to say it, call it an opportunity, but there wasn't. Yeah, it is. But I mean, there was a chance for people starving for content to provide them with maybe something that would be fun to watch and kill a Friday night while they're, in quarantine.
Yeah. And I think this film specifically has a really good, it's a perfect streaming film. Like it's built like for streaming without question.
Right. Well, and the other thing is I hope people get it, really. Like, I hope people get it, because we really tried to explore, celebrity, like who are we in America, and I read this great book called Fantasyland, which I've been recommending to everybody, which talks, it's kind of a revisionist history of America and the way in which America has sort of managed to create itself as this kind of like fantasy land where like facts no longer matter, and everybody can have their own viewpoint, and this kind of thing, and this movie lives in that world. This movie lives in a world where it's not about, like, you're not going to see the cops after them in this movie. You're not going to see a detective trying to figure out, oh, where are they? You're not going to see like Instagram shutting down their feed. Like, that misses the point of this. This is like a satire. This is about celebrity in America, the way that we anoint people and give them a mouthpiece and give them a pedestal, whether they're deserving of it or not. And America's got a history of it, man. We've already done it. We do it with Bonnie and Clyde. We did it with all these other serial killers. We gave them a voice to talk to America, and they did it. And America's supported that in a lot of ways. And I think, like, you have those stories of like the Justine Sacco who like tweeted the like, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, and when you have America waiting for her flight to land to see what's going to happen, that's the world that this movie lives in, because it's a movie where I firmly believe if this was going on and it was two young, good-looking people, we would all be following them.
Do you remember
watching them and liking it
and
cheering them on?
There's no question.
Even if we hated them and disagree with it, we would still be following it.
Obviously, because that's the entire careers of the Kardashians. So no, I saw a great meme the other day. It was all the Kardashians, and they're just sitting there, because you haven't heard about the Kardashians at all, right? It's been a bit, right? So they're like, they're all discussing who they're going to give COVID to so they become irrelevant again. There was a movie. This movie reminds me of this, and in a completely different way, but yet similar. There's a movie in the 80s called The Legend of Billie Jean. Do you remember that movie?
I haven't seen it, but I heard of it.
It's with Slater, Kelly Slater. I forgot her name. She was Supergirl, the original Supergirl. But her really young. It's Christian Slater's first movie.
Okay.
Ever. He's a kid in it, and it's basically a story about. It's a lot more. It's 80s innocent. So, but she becomes like a rebel because she stabs somebody for protecting somebody else, and she becomes an outlaw. And then now she gets a cult following of everybody's behind Billie Jean, and it's like this whole thing. I love that movie, but it reminds me of it was media building. It was media building her up into something that was just literally a disagreement, a local disagreement that turned into a nationwide phenomenon.
Right.
Which was really, and the whole cops were after her and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the world we live in now, and I wanted to make something, I also wanted to make something that was like, reflective of that, and so using things like trying to think about the way in which the audiences now consume content, and trying to angle for something like that. Even the opening font of the movie that gives the title over her in the beginning of the movie is that sort of neon cursive that you get on Instagram. Right. And we really wanted to saturate it, really get the chroma saturation in this so that it was reflective of the way in which we see posts on Instagram that have all been filterized. I didn't want to make this cool blues and blacks movie. Like, this to me was like, this movie had to be colorful. It had to look like content that we are already seeing, online. And so that was the things we talked about, from wardrobe to production design to the cinematography was all about color. It's got to be poppy. It's got to be fun. And it's also got to be sort of like unapologetic. I'm not going into this saying like, this is bad. I'm also not going into saying that this is good. I'm kind of saying this probably would happen. Like, I wouldn't be surprised about it.
So let me ask you now, because you last time you shot was late last year. Moving forward, man, as far as COVID is concerned, how do you think shooting is going to be like? Because we can't really, the way you made this movie, you can't make now. The way I've made my movies, you can't make them now like that. Like, it's just not possible. And nobody really knows what the future lies and how long that future is. I don't believe that we're going to be social distancing for the next 20 years. I don't think that's going to happen. But in the next 2 to 5, maybe.
Maybe.
How do you like, as a creator, as a film director who needs a crew on set to make something happen, how do you see this playing out for yourself and your career and for basically for everybody?
Yeah.
That's a big question. And I don't expect you to have the answer, but I just like your opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be challenging because I think that, I think it's going to hurt a lot of indies, because you see these sort of production manuals coming out for like, here's how we do this. And you're going like, you're testing everybody on set every day. Like, who's paying?
It's going to slow down so much.
It's going to slow down so much. And at the same time, though, I keep hearing like, people are going, oh, we're ready to go back. We want to shoot in July. I'm kind of going like, nobody's going back to work until the unions and the guilds are going to believe that everybody is safe. And I have a very hard time believing that SAG ever agrees to go back until there's a vaccine. Because as much as a crew can wear masks and gloves and for the most part stay 6 feet away from each other, actors can't do that. No. Like, what's a movie going to look like where they're like constantly 6 feet? I mean, you can't do romance stories. You can't do anything. And so I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle because they can't wear masks in the scene. And most of the time they're in close proximity to people. And it's going to be very, very difficult until that happens. As much as everybody wants to come back. And the other thing too is, as much as you could go make a movie without like IATSE, you cannot go make a movie without SAG.
Yeah. I mean, you could go non-union, but still, it's difficult.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to get people to sign up. You want to have non-union actors. Like, you don't get a chance with anybody. And then what are you doing? You're making movies so small for such a small budget that, like, because you can't guarantee you're going to get $1 million back because you don't have an actor who's of value.
Correct.
You know, monetarily. So it's and is
there even a foreign market? Right now, there's not. Right now, it's very difficult to sell anything. So
all the post houses are closed. Nobody can do dubbing. Nobody can do subtitling. So even if they can buy it, I mean, they'd probably love to have the content because Europe's the same way. They're starved for content. But at the same, it's so weird because it's like you're trapped at home, and all anybody is doing is consuming TV shows and movies. But there's no possible way for the producers of that content to try and do more.
I literally just signed up for HBO Max because I need friends. I'm sorry. Yeah. I need my friends, and they have a couple of other things that they're going to have on there that I wanted to get. And then they get, oh, here we have HBO now. And I've never paid for HBO. It's just never a thing I did. So I started going through. I'm like, oh, that show I've always wanted. Oh, Chernobyl. I want to watch that. Oh, I haven't seen Ballers. I've been dying to watch Ballers. And like, I'm trying to, like, all these shows. I'm like, oh my God. Like right now we're in the middle of, we just finished Blacklist. So we just caught up on 7 seasons of Blacklist.
Wow. That's a commitment.
We went through that in about 3 weeks. My wife and I, we just piled through it, man. It was like, it's so good. And now we're like, How to Get Away with Murder. We're in the first season of that.
Oh yeah.
Such a great show. It's a good show. Good, right?
We kind of stopped around season 3, but it's good. First season's really, really good.
Yeah, it's a really good show. And now we're like, after that, we're like, oh, let's just jump into Chernobyl. And then Netflix is popping out stuff every freaking week. And we haven't even mentioned Tiger King.
Tiger King. Oh God. See, the funny part is like my wife and I are the opposite. Like because we have our 2 young kids. I have a 6-year-old and 2.5-year-old. Like we get them down at 8. Maybe we have till 10 because our kids are waking up at 6. I'm like, look at all these people on Twitter that I follow, and they're just like watching 4 movies a day. I'm like, you guys, nothing has changed for me. In fact, I'm consuming less content than I did before this whole thing because I have no time, and I can't watch stuff around my kids. I can't put on like Apocalypse Now around my 6-year-old. Like he's gonna be like, what is all? Although they have seen parts of Infamous, which is pretty graphic.
No, it's like I haven't, like, to watch a film. I've watched fewer films. I'm watching a lot of television, because we can stop midway and it's not that big of a deal, and you can just kind of cook through it. But actual cinema, sitting down and enjoying cinema, like the next big event for me, and it's not even cinema, is Hamilton when it comes out on Disney Plus.
For sure. I'm like, yes, this is gonna be great.
It's been a dream of mine to get tickets, and we haven't got tickets. And my wife was just about to get me tickets for my birthday.
Oh, really?
For this season, because it came back to LA. And then COVID happened. So I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna see Hamilton.
Never gonna see it.
And now and I heard July 3rd, baby. I'm like,
July 3rd. I also like too how they were like, oh, they decided to move it up a year early. I'm like, a year? They were going to sit on this until 2021? What are you talking about?
You paid $75 million for that. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, crazy. Jesus, man. So, all right.
Shot it like 2 years ago, which is crazy.
No, they shot it first year. No, it was first. Yeah, whenever it's the original cast.
Right. I'm saying, I don't know what date that was, but it was a while ago. So they've been sitting on it for like.
Oh, they've sat on that since the beginning, and they're just holding on to it, waiting for the moment to finally release it. Let's not go down our Hamilton path, because I've listened to that song. I can literally verbatim sing the damn soundtrack. I've listened to that damn thing so much. All right, so moving forward, man, I'd just like to hear what you think. If you're a filmmaker, and you and I have been down the street a little bit, been around the block a couple times. We got a couple of movies under our belt. We've been working in the industry for a while. Yeah. You're just starting out, man, and you're in COVID. What do you do? Like, how do you, like, if you're just like right now, you're at home, you got a camera, maybe you have a couple of friends who
you can zoom in on them.
Like, how do you start? Like, what do you do? Because this is not going to go away in a month. No, I'm fairly certain that this is going to be until 2021 and beyond, before things start to settle back down. Probably next summer, things will start to maybe start coming back. Hopefully by then. So that's a while. What do you do, man? What do you do as a filmmaker?
Well, I mean, look, like if anything, you shouldn't feel as urgent to, you shouldn't feel in that position where you're like, I got to get it done. I got to get my feature made. I'm losing time. Right. No. Like, I mean, I remember being 22 being like, I haven't made a feature yet. I got to do it.
Orson Welles made his at 23. Yeah. What am I doing with my life? Yeah.
Like feeling that hurry. I mean, to me, I think it's the perfect time to be kind of fucking around and like doing it without consequence, because
learning.
I think that's learning, because I think that's one, if you haven't gone to film school, that's what film school should be. But two, there's going to come a time where there's a lot of money, hopefully for people out there, there's going to come a time where there's a lot of money on the line. And if they fuck up, there's not going to be another chance, Mm-hmm. And so what better time to be in a position where like, basically you're like, you can't do anything except that which has no public consequence, right? Like you're not going to feel compelled. You don't necessarily need to feel compelled to release it, because you're like, I'm just going to learn. I'm going to learn how to go do green screen. I'm going to thank God, like it's not 2005 where you're like, all you're stuck with is Alex Ferrari's one site. And
that one DVD, that's it.
One DVD, and you don't know how to, you're like, well, I want to do lightsabers. It's like, well, sorry.
Alex, I didn't do lightsabers and broken. Sorry.
And you got all these broken knockoffs coming out.
That's hilarious.
No, I mean, I think it's like, you've got such a resource online now. Anything you want to do.
Oh,
you want to do this, do that. You want to do this, that. And try taking that time, because now you've been given a little bit of a pause button, to kind of work on your craft. And if you have some friends, I mean, look, you can do some fun stuff, but like, the best thing that you can do is be in a position to work on people with performance, and that's hard, so is it doing some live readings, over Zoom? Is it working on your writing? Is it sitting down writing? Because like I've been in that position where I feel rushed, or I used to feel rushed to writing, and the scripts were not ready. They were not the best ideas, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, let alone telling what other people to do.
Look, I was riding my bike with my family around the neighborhood the other day, and I saw an indie film crew making.
Yeah, really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. As I turned the corner, I saw, because you could smell them. There's just something you could point them out. Like I didn't see the crew yet, I didn't see the cast yet. But there was just something about their energy. I'm like, they're shooting something. And I look around. I'm like, oh, there's a red. Okay, so they got a red. So there's the DP, the director, I guess a producer, somebody else in a car building it out. Mm-hmm. Right? No masks, no social distancing. Then I turn the corner. There's 7 actors huddled together, all standing together in costume, and they're making a quarantine movie. Can we just say right now, anyone listening, I'm sorry if you're in the middle of editing your quarantine short or your quarantine feature, that you think you're really ahead of the game, that no one else is doing on the pulse of the society right now, that you were the first to jump out at this. Please understand, I've been sent easily 15 to 20 quarantine shorts to look at in the last 3 weeks. And there's all the time. I'm getting them all the time. Like, hey, we went out and shot this cord. Like, it's just another way to kind of hack the system. And I was the king of trying to hack the system, trying to get the leverage, whatever I can do to stand out and all that kind of stuff. Stop. Nobody wants to watch a quarantine film.
There's one quarantine film that they do want to watch, and that's Contagion.
Yeah, I just finished Outbreak. Again. I hadn't seen it since 95. I watched Outbreak. I'm going to probably watch Contagion. But that's not a quarantine movie. That's
exactly.
That was a Contagion.
But even so, it's like, and beyond that, nobody's going to want to watch it when this is all over.
Oh, no.
Everybody writing scripts are like, nobody's going to make it. But two, I'm like, even if they made it, this is the last thing anybody wants to watch.
Nobody wants to watch that.
The only thing, write a comedy. The only thing anybody's going to want to watch is comedy, But I think that's true. And to that point, like, if it's for a quarantine short, like, I just find that incredibly irresponsible, because you're risking other people getting sick.
Yes.
for a movie that nobody wants to see. And so I think that's important too, which is like, don't make a quarantine short. Nobody's going to watch it. Don't put people into, danger because you're trying to get a short made. Don't make them feel like they've got to work if they don't, or risk it for it because this isn't worth it. And, I think that it's about having the time and the space to figure out a story that you want to tell. Because that's it. It doesn't even with like Southland. I mean, sorry, it was called Southland. Even with Infamous, I've done a couple movies, but I haven't done anything that would make somebody go like, oh, definitely, let's give this guy $20 million to do this movie. So for me, it really came down to I just need a good script. Right. I need a good script that's going to attract talent and attract financiers because the talent's attracted to it.
Right.
And I think that takes time. It took me 3 years. If you're not picking back up till 2022, like you got some time to get that script going. So I think it really comes back to the act of I do believe that like we need to get a little bit away from the technology side of it and this idea of cameras and this and that.
Oh, please, thank you. Preach.
Like, people just don't care. They don't care that your movie was shot on Red. They don't care that it was shot on Alexa Mini. They don't care that it's shot on an iPhone. If it's engaging and it's a good story and it's personal and it makes them feel something, they'll watch it and they'll get behind it.
Absolutely. Look, Ego and Desire was shot on a Blackmagic 1080p camera. Shot at 1080p. It doesn't matter. And of course Tangerine on an iPhone. We've gotten past the point where the image is the barrier. Like when I did make Broken with like the DVX mini DV standard def, there was limits to the image quality. Now literally what you have in your pocket is fine. Is it the Alexa Mini? No. But if you're making a certain kind of movie, who cares?
I mean, it's good enough for Soderbergh.
He's doing all right. He's doing all right,
He's doing all right.
But he also has a few Oscars under his belt too, so he can get away with stuff like that.
He knows what he's doing. He's DP'd a few things.
Exactly.
But it's, his stuff looked great. Like I love the basketball movie. Like, I thought it looked cool,
He's amazing. I love, he's my power animal. He really
I just want to see the movie he does. I want to see the movie he does during quarantine because he's doing something.
It's not Contagion 2, I can tell you that.
No, but he's doing something on his iPhone and he's going to star in it. It's going to be Soderbergh movie.
I think they brought him in for the DGA.
They put him as the head. He's like the head of like the DGA like recovery thing or something like that.
Like how to shoot in Contagion.
Yeah.
And isn't that the most Hollywood thing to do? Oh, get the guy who shot the movie about a pandemic, put him in charge.
Of figuring out how to shoot a movie during a pandemic.
Yeah, which has nothing to do with the movie, how he made it. Just like he must know more than we do.
He must know.
When I heard that, I'm like, that's so Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's like get the guy gets the guy who shoots airplanes. Like, do you know how Tony Scott got Top Gun?
No.
He shot a commercial with an F-18 landing behind a Honda or like a Mercedes or something.
Oh, really? Nice.
And Jerry Bruckheimer's like, that's our guy.
That guy.
That guy.
There you go. That guy. That'd be cool if you could like easily get a commercial with a F-18 Hornet. And
well, it was the 80s and it was Tony Scott. He was, it was
10,000 commercials before he shot his first movie.
Rest in peace, Tony. We miss you.
It's I just think it's the craft. The craft will be there, but I think the storytelling won't be. And I think take the time. Also learn stuff. I mean, get away from it too. Get away from it a little bit. Like,
learn as much as you can.
Something else. Learn as much as you can.
Read some books.
Have fun exploring. Yeah, you give it a pause button. Nobody's doing anything, and odds are, like, if you're a new person, like, they're not going to be considering your script. Like, even if they're looking at scripts now and doing development, like, nobody's planning to shoot anything right away. And the things that come back are the things that they know they can make money on.
Right.
So it's a little bit of arrested development at the moment, which is, I'm sure difficult for everybody because sitting through, a year or 2 years of this can be tough, But at the same time, like, I also know if you're in your 20s, that's 2 years closer to being in your 30s when you're more likely to have success and more likely to be given something.
Just cook through those 20s as fast as possible is what you're saying.
Get through those 20s, enjoy yourself.
Have some fun.
Go have some adventures, get some life experience, then come back and tell stories about it. That's what you need to do.
Look, I just woke up yesterday. I'm 45, dude. I don't know how that happened. Like, I don't.
You don't look it.
I appreciate it. It's clean living, sir. Clean living. But, exactly. I mean, your 20s are a blur.
Yeah.
The 20s.
I wasted way too much of my 20s.
Oh, I wasted my
working,
20s.
Trying to make it. I should have
enjoyed
now
myself.
In my 30s, I'm rebalancing it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's only age. So if you're in your 20s, guys, enjoy yourselves. Hustle, learn, grow, get experience, but take advantage, because I promise you, your body will never be that good again.
Nope.
No matter how good of shape you are.
Yeah.
If you're vegan, if you're in amazing shape, just be kind to your ankles and knees.
I had a professor of film professor, history of film professor in college who I loved. He was so great, but he always had this thing. He was like, basically, you turn 18 and then you start to die.
That's exactly true. Like your peak is 18 physically, 15, 18, 19.
In your 30s, you're dead already, basically. And I was like, dude,
you're dead man walking. You're dead man walking.
Yeah, you're dead man walking at that point. You're like, yeah, all right. Thanks for the encouragement.
Can you tell everybody where they can find Infamous and get in contact with you or see more of your work?
So Infamous is going to be everywhere VOD, not subscription, so not Hulu, not Netflix, but on June 12th, it'll be everywhere. iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, Fandango, Google, you name it. You'll probably see it. And, I'm on Twitter at Joshua_Caldwell. I'm on Instagram at Joshua Caldwell Director. Those are good places to kind of get on there and find me. And, I've really, kind of, this, coming on this podcast, talking through stuff, how we did things, I tend to be trying to be very open as I can be about that process and what that's like, and respond in kind to, I have people hit me up like trying to do this. I live in Africa. I want to come to the States, go to film school. I'm like, why? He's like, well, you get better. I'm like, dude, make yourself good there, and then they'll come find you. But, the thing that I always say to people is like, if you can just take advantage of where you are. If you're in Kentucky, find some cool fucking ghost story that takes place that is some legend in Kentucky that nobody's ever heard of, and shoot it there. People are so quick to get to LA, because and you get to LA, and I did it, but it's like if you have a great story, you tell an awesome little story that's regional, that's about your area, and is really good and breaks out because nobody's heard of it before, people will come find you. Anyway, Slacker, Mariachi, Clerks. Yeah, she's got to have it. Like all of those, they're all stories about where they're shot. Broken. Come on. Okay, stop it. Just stop it already. We've said that name too many times in this episode. Personal story. It's a very personal story of a crazy person that gets kidnapped. Yes, and has special powers. Exactly. But anyway, I think that there's a lot to be taken advantage of, especially if you're stuck at home and you don't know where to go. Like, do some local research. But people are always, people can feel free to reach out, and I try to respond in kind. I'm always trying to be open about that process and this kind of really insane journey. But man, Joshua, it has been a pleasure as always. I know we could probably sit and geek out for at least another 5-6 hours, but I know you have kids. Let's do it over the years. We'll spread it out. You've got kids to go take care of now in homeschool, so we have. You got to stop the bouncing. Exactly, man. It's a pleasure, brother. Thank you again for sharing your adventures with the tribe, man. Thanks again.